United Airlines referred to an involuntary deboarding situation with that horrific video of a passenger being dragged off. We had one of those with our satellite issues as well. Let's go back to Jace Anspaugh. He was sitting a few seats away from the man being dragged out of his seat and off the plane. He took video of the incident. So set the scene for us. You boarded the plane. They did they had to adjust something, fix it, and then what happened?
Yeah, one of the attendants came up to the front of the plane, let us know that 4 personnel needed to be in Louisville that night because they had work the next day, and so they needed to make room. Asked for 4 volunteers, and there was no volunteers, so they basically said if we're not leaving until there's 4 seats opened up for these personnel. And it took about 10-15 minutes until they decided to go ahead and make the decision for us. And so one of the attendants left. She came back with 4 slips with the seat number and name, and started going to those seats and just basically tell them, we chose you. You got to get off the plane. And yeah, so they approached this doctor, told him to get off the plane, and he refused because he had work the next day. He's a medical doctor here in Louisville.
So you could hear some of the conversation, and he was saying he couldn't do it because he's a doctor. He had patients to see the next day.
Yeah, exactly. He was very emphatic. I can't be late. I'm a doctor. I got to be there tomorrow. In fact, actually, he volunteered. Him and his wife, they volunteered initially for a second, but once they found out that the next flight wasn't until today at 2:30 p.m., he said, I can't do that. I got to be at work. So he sat back down. So maybe that had something to do with them choosing him, but yeah.
And then he came back on the plane, and he looks like he was bleeding.
Yeah. So after they dragged him off, I mean, he was bleeding he hit his face when they initially dragged him off, as you guys saw, and it was 10 minutes later. He just comes running back in, and runs to the back. His face is bloody, and just clings onto the post in the back, and just saying, I gotta go home, I need to go home, I need to go home. And it wasn't until like 30-45 seconds later till authorities followed him. So I don't know what happened in the jetway, but he managed to escape from them and runs back into the plane.
But ultimately he was taken off the plane and did not get to fly to Kentucky.
No, he didn't. He was taken off twice.
And lastly,
once dragged and once put on a stretcher. So.
Lastly, Jace, will this affect whether or not you fly United Airlines again?
Probably, yeah. I mean, the way they handled the situation it wasn't right, and so that will affect it, yeah.
Jace Anspaugh, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.